Okay, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Sacramento Transportation Authority Board of Directors for May 8th, 2025. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll and establish a quorum?
Absolutely. Good afternoon. Directors Desmond. Director Desmond. Here. Guerra. Here. Hume. Here. Kennedy. Here. Kent. Here. Nelson. Here. Pulipati. Here. Raythel. Here. Rodriguez.
Here.
And Cerna.
Here.
And we do have a quorum.
Great. If you could please read our statement, Madam Clerk.
This meeting of the Sacramento Transportation Authority is live and recorded with closed captioning. It is cablecast on Metro Cable Channel 14, the local government affairs channel on the Comcast and DirecTV Uverse cable systems. It is also live streamed at metro14live.saccounty.gov. Today's meeting replays Sunday at 2:00 p.m. on Metro Cable Channel 14. Once posted, the recording of this meeting can be viewed on demand at youtube.com/metrocable14. To make an in-person public comment, please complete a speaker request form and hand it to the clerk. The chairperson will call your name when it's your turn to make a comment. You may also send written comments by email to boardclerk@saccounty.gov. Your comment will be routed to the board and filed in the record.
Great. Thank you very much. Will you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Again, I'd like to welcome everyone to this afternoon's STA Board of Directors meeting. And again, remind anyone that's joined us here in person that you're certainly welcome to address the Authority Board. We ask that you please keep your comments to 3 minutes, and if you would, please do us the courtesy of filling out a speaker slip and giving it to the clerk so we have your name correctly spelled and have you on record. With that, Madam Clerk, first item, please.
First item on the agenda is comments from the public regarding matters not on the agenda. I have not received any public comment forms.
All right, very good. Next item, please.
Next item is our consent calendar, items number 2 through 5.
Okay, any member of the Authority Board wish to pull an item off consent for separate vote or have comments?
I'll go ahead and move items 2 through 5 once not pulled.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone signed up to speak on consent?
I have not received any cards.
All right. Are we doing voice or we're doing electronic?
Since we do have a member participating remotely today, we'll do a roll call vote.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
I'm so sorry. Director Guerra?
Aye.
Director Hume?
Aye.
Director Kennedy? Director Kent?
Aye.
Director Nelson?
Aye.
Director Pulipati?
Yes.
Director Raythel?
Aye.
Director Rodriguez?
Aye.
And Chair Cerna.
Aye.
And that passes.
All right, very good. Next item, please.
Item number 6 is the annual public hearing on staff vacancies pursuant to AB 2561.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, board chair and vice chair.
I'm sorry, can we bring up the lights? There's no light on the podium. Thank you.
All right. I am here to present on the annual public hearing for staff vacancies for the STA. This is pursuant to AB 2561. This mandates local agencies present our employee vacancies and related hiring practices at least once a year. This is our first time doing this hearing. As of right now, STA has 3 staff and 0 current vacancies. We run a fairly lean agency, and we only hire when it's necessary. And there is no fiscal impact to this item. And that concludes my verbal presentation. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Don't see any. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone signed up from the public that would wish to speak on this matter?
Oh, we do not.
Okay. Is this informational, or do we need to take action?
It is a public hearing, so we'll need to open and close the public hearing, and I believe just approve staff recommendations.
I'll go ahead and move item number 6 for approval.
Okay. Okay, it's been moved and seconded with the record showing that the public hearing's been open and closed. Roll call vote, please.
Director Desmond? Aye. Director Guerra? Aye. Director Hume?
Aye.
Director Kennedy? Aye. Director Nelson?
Aye.
Director Pulapati?
Yes.
Director Rathel?
Aye.
Director Rodriguez?
Aye.
Director Talamontes?
Aye.
And Chair Serna.
Aye.
And that does pass unanimously with those members present.
Very good. Next item, please.
Next item on the agenda is item number 7. It is to introduce the draft STA budget for fiscal year 2025-2026.
All right.
All right. Hello again. I'm here to present the fiscal year 2025-26 budget draft. This will be formally adopted in June. This is just the presentation of the draft for comments and public comment. So we are legally required to adopt a fiscal budget, and the ITALC has already reviewed this budget over the last couple of weeks. I've got comments from them, and we've incorporated them. As I said earlier, the June meeting will be the final adoption of this budget for us to operate under in the next fiscal year. And there's one open item I want to draw attention to. It's the appropriations limit. It isn't in there yet because it hasn't been released by the state. It's released later in May, but the final draft will have that. Next slide here. So a couple of things that are unique to the authority. So we are a special district sales tax, which gives us some relative stability in the market. And we have a funding constricted capital improvement program, which means we do not budget for things that we don't have funding capacity for. Most of our revenues are formulaically allocated to all the jurisdictions. That's about 80%. The remaining 20% is our more discretionary CIP that's decided on our expenditure plan. Next item here is the population and per capita spending stability. So the population's been fairly stable year over year. Per capita spending is actually up about 5.4%. And with this, we have some stability in our operating dollars year to year. So, and we've also been focusing on paying down long-term pension liabilities, which is going to give us more administrative flexibility in the years to come. The next slide here, a couple of budgetary highlights from the budget just to draw out the bigger items. Our sales tax revenue forecast is about 2% lower than it was in the previous year. As I mentioned in an earlier board presentation, things are just a little bit softer, and higher spending is causing less discretionary sales tax spending. Capital improvements program budget appropriations are 63% higher. The majority of that is with the County of Sacramento. They've had balances that have rolled from year to year, and it's specifically on South Watt. That project is drawing or budgeted to draw a large amount of funding. And lastly, the Consolidated Transportation Service Agency, CTSA, for the acronym, that program balance is projected to be spent fully this year, and all of that lies with SAC-RT. We've fully paid out paratransit from those funds, leaving us with just SAC-RT. But in the next couple of slides here, Kevin Busey is going to come up and present on, and I'll hand it over to him.
Thank you, Dustin.
Yeah, so in our budget, we include 3 kind of strategic planning goals. We include this last year as well. So one is build public trust, right? So as a sales tax authority who uses revenue from our residents, we need to ensure that we're being a good steward of public funds, right? And then obviously as we continue to want to pursue sales tax measures, we need to ensure that we have that trust and we're doing that. So that's an important strategic planning goal. Second is developing great relationships. As Dustin mentioned, about 80% of the funds go back to the county, the city, SAC-RT, Caltrans, right? And they're utilizing those funds. And so we distribute those funds. We need to make sure we have good relations with those partner agencies. But in addition to that, one of the one of the things that Measure A is supposed to do is leverage federal and state funds, and federal and state funding is very complicated, and so ensuring that we have good relationships with those funding partners is also something we need to do. And then finally, aligning transportation's priorities with funding. So we have Measure A as a good local source. Obviously, every city, county has different priorities, right, as far as where the transportation projects or programs that they want to fund. And we assist to the extent we can in using Measure A or leveraging Measure A for grants and trying to align those priorities with funding. So those are the 3 strategic planning goals. The only it hasn't changed from last year. The only addition that we've added is there were not performance measures identifying specifically how we are going to essentially make those goals, work through those goals, and so that was added with this item, with this budget. Another thing I wanted to highlight, which is different, is, we talked about building public trust, and we talked about developing great relationships. And so what we're proposing with this budget is adding 1 additional staff. So we're looking at adding an entry-level communication specialist to really help with a lot of things we were talking about. So, working with the Measure A partner agencies, working with citizens and stakeholders, and then finally, working with the funding agencies. We think it'll help us do more of what we need to do at STA. I would say, I think there's a lot more work than this person can do, but I think adding 1 staff, I think, will help us out greatly. And then finally, aligning transportation priorities with funding, I wanted to highlight the Smart Growth Arterials and Corridors program. So this particular program is one of our somewhat discretionary funding sources, right? And so as we try to leverage, local funds to get more state and federal dollars, this is one of the funding sources we can use a little bit more strategically. So the SB1 Solutions for Congested Corridors program, as an example, we have some funding in for a match on a grant to do some planning that's needed on 80, and once that planning is done, we will be eligible for SB1 Solutions for Congested Corridors program. The SACOG federal funding rounds coming out. Typically, we've used this fund to provide the local match for community design, which has been pretty successful in the past. I will note that community design does not exist anymore, so we're going to have to go through a sort of what are we going to use with these funds in the next couple of cycles. So there'll be some work coming up in the next 6 months on that. Safe Streets and Roads for All is another one where in order to be eligible for Safe Streets and Roads for All, you have to do some planning work. Specifically, we're going to do a countywide safety action plan. And once that's done, all the agencies will be eligible for those grant funds, as well as the Highway Safety Improvement Program. So just want to give you a flavor of how we're thinking about using those funds. Some of it's cooked up in the budget. Some of it we're going to come back to you with looking for more specific board direction. And so the recommendation here is just to introduce the fiscal year 25-26 budget and related resolution, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have. But this is not an action item.
Okay, this is just an information item today?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, we'll start with Director Guerra.
Thank you very much, Director Serna. The one comment I have and concern here is on this new FTE, and I guess maybe a point of conversation. Maybe I wouldn't say concern, but point of conversation here is, as we come to the budget, is what you're intending to hire you said an entry-level communications person, and the purpose of it is to do a lot of outreach and stuff as we're coming up to the ballot measure. But it almost seems to me that it would probably be more appropriate that if a ballot measure was passed, to have a full-time FTE. But if we're only within a year's time frame of a ballot measure, given how long it takes to scale up somebody engaged in what they need to do, shouldn't we actually think about more about what if we should recruit a firm that does the outreach or stuff that they have experience doing that? Because if not, if your intent is to get the communication going out and engagement, we'll probably spend at least the first 6 months on an entry-level person. And so that's, I guess, the balance for the board that I would say is now, again, we're adding another FTE, to a dwindling pot of money when we've got a downward trajectory at the moment for sales tax revenue. If we had the new measure approved, I think what we haven't done in the past is more communication outreach about transportation, and we should do that going forward. But I think the focus should be, let's get the strongest communications approach out within the next year. So I would be much more interested in having a conversation whether it's more appropriate if what you're trying to do here, because you're also saying you need someone to help you with applications for grants or other agencies. So now you're spreading all of these different duties with a very small pot of money. So I think the understanding what the priority is would be helpful. And I agree those are all important priorities. So those are my concerns and points of conversation, since we're not voting on that now, Chair, but as we come to the budget.
Great, thank you. Good comments. Director Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. So first, I'm going to apologize to my colleagues, because many of you are going to hear me bring this up pretty consistently over the many different boards and commissions we sit on. Is there any money yet? I realize it's multi-jurisdictional and it's complex, but is there any money yet in the budget for the BRT lane on Stockton Boulevard?
So Stockton Boulevard is not a Measure A project.
Right.
We have what's called, we had some matching funds that we provided local agencies through community design. And so there is a small amount of funding still on Stockton Boulevard related to those matching funds for that smart growth related funds. But it's not in our expenditure plan currently.
Okay. Oh, yeah, okay. Thank you.
Director Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm of somewhat the same thinking as Director Guerra with respect to the addition of the, or proposed addition of the communications specialist. And it seems to me that if we engage in trying to develop a measure, which we're presumably going to do, that in the context of whoever we might retain to consult on that community outreach and public interaction would be a part of that contract. Or maybe there'd be multiple contracts. I mean, I'm not prejudging that, but certainly there's no question we would want to incorporate community outreach, it seems to me, in any effort we might make to develop a measure and get to the point of settling on something that we'd like to see go on the ballot. And so I'm curious about just your own sense of what the need for this position, and I see it's slated for mid-year, so you're not proposing it for July 1st. I see it's start of next year, calendar year, but I'm interested in what you see as the need for this addition, and I would say, especially in light of what we may see as continuing declining revenue, hope not, but may see declining revenue.
Yeah, I think from my standpoint, I think, from what I've seen is that the challenge that we have with our current approach has been, it's been very reactionary to when a measure is moving forward, right? And so SDA sort of, I'll borrow some words from one of our board members, is sort of toils in obscurity, right? Nobody knows we really exist. And then all of a sudden we put a measure on the ballot and it's like, hey, remember STA, we exist, right? And so I think there needs to be just some sort of basic, education on that SDA exists. We have the measure, we're utilizing it, right? And so currently we have an intern. We spend about $20,000 a year on an intern that really is just wholly focused on more on the social media standpoint, right? But I think we're really lacking in actually ensuring that the voters know that we exist and they're educated about how our current measure works. And so I view this as sort of a baseline level of community engagement that needs to happen. And then as we ramp up for a specific measure and need to increase education on a new measure, that's additional cost above and beyond. That's my intent. And we can certainly, obviously we can certainly not hire someone. And it's very it's very challenging to continue to have these sort of fits and stops on educating, right? And so, like before I started, I looked at our social media as an example, and it was like we posted like 2 years ago, and then we posted 6 months ago, and it was like that's it. Now we're posting every week, but I just think there's some base work that needs to be done. So all we're asking for is an entry level position. The reason why we're able to really afford that, I think, is one. We intentionally paid down our long-term pension liability, which was about $150,000 plus the additional money we were paying, which is another $100,000. So an entry-level position is very, very feasible with where we're at, and we've done a 5-year projection to make sure there's no issues as far as where we see revenues going. So we're in good shape financially for that.
Okay,
Hope that helps.
that helps. That helps me understand a little bit about your concept here. I'm just curious, have you had any conversations with the beneficiary agencies, with the city, the county, all the cities, with regional transit about using their public relations, public information, personnel and activities to accomplish this baseline education element that you've described?
We've had conversations with SAC-RT specifically about doing a shared position, see if they could be half-time at FTE, half-time FTE at SAC-RT as an example, for a variety of reasons. One of that has to do with the cost savings to us, but the other part of it has to do with ensuring that whoever we hire has the ability to learn and grow in their position across multiple agencies. But I would say we haven't had a lot of intensive discussions with the county and cities about this particular position. Some of that has to do with just we haven't had the time to do that have those discussions. But
okay, I don't know. I think that kind of discussion might be useful. I think all the jurisdictions, if they're doing a project, put up signs saying that we're using Measure A money, those kinds of things. At least I presume they all do. City does, the county does, City of Sacramento, I should say. I assume the other cities do as well. That's a minimum level of education effort, certainly, but all the jurisdictions have people in their transportation departments and their public information capacities that could be the conduit for what you want to accomplish, which I do think makes sense. And I'm just wondering if there's a way of economizing, but getting the result that you'd like to see. Anyway, maybe it's something to think about between now and maybe have some conversations about between now and the time we take action on the budget. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Good comments. Director Nelson.
That's actually me, Chair. The computer wouldn't allow me to log in, so
Okay.
I'm borrowing a mic.
So let me just, before you start, the monitors are all screwed up here. So does Director Talamantes wish to speak next? Okay. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone else in the queue that wants to speak?
I do not see the queue on my end. I'm
okay.
on the phone with Metro Cable, and the fix is to restart the system. If you'd like to restart the system.
That's all right.
Okay.
We'll get through this. Director Pulapati, I see you on the screen. Did you want to chime in here? Okay. All right. The floor is yours, Director Hume.
Thank you, sir. I'm a little confused. Usually when I review a budget, there are rows and columns and numbers, and I didn't see any of those things.
in the presentation, it's in the budget, but
Where is the budget? Because I actually thought that maybe my staff had not printed something out, and I pulled it up on the website, and it's not in that packet either. If I've missed something,
there is a link to the budget in the staff report.
there is a link to the budget in the staff report.
Yes.
Aha, under attachment. Click here to view budgets. There it is. Whole lot of information. Thank you.
Right, absolutely.
For a minute there, I thought whatever's affecting the monitors had infected your phone there.
I wish it could be right.
Director Talamantes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm perfectly fine with hiring an intern-level communications person. You know, I recently ran the Sacramento Public Library ballot measure to renew it, and and well, in perpetuity, so I don't have to keep running a measure every 10 years. And having that education is so important. There are reels on Instagram that say, Measure A does X, Y, and Z for you. Measure A is responsible for this for you. And our City of Sacramento departments, like utilities, community response, like at least 8 different departments have their own social media handles. And they're doing like really fun videos about the history of Sacramento, what it looks like the underground tunnels. And people love this information. People are hungry for this information. And people spend more than 10 hours a week or day on their phones. So we need to invest a little bit of money into future millions of dollars if we want to convince the voters that like we're using their taxpayer dollars appropriately. So please move forward on my end with the budgeted position.
Vice Chair Ratho.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo Director Telemontes. From somebody who's newly serving here, but somebody who was pretty involved in local government, I had no idea what this board does, and no idea, driving past and seeing those signs during construction time. If anything, it's not helping the image, right? Put them up large, giant signs when the construction is done, that may be helpful. Say this project provided to you by Measure A, but I'd be fully supportive. It's a relatively small cost, and I do think it pays large dividends in the long term, and not turning it on and off. Really, when you turn things off, it takes a long time to build back up.
Director Rodriguez.
I just want to throw my vote in also for hiring somebody to do some educational information out to the public on what STA does. Prior to being an elected official, I would see, that there was a project that was supported by Measure A, but I never knew what that actually meant to me as a somebody who was driving the street. And so a little education to let people know what Measure A would do and some of the potential projects that are out there that are kind of stalled because we don't have funding for, I think is really important for people to make that connection to. And so I'm really big on public education on projects. Thank you.
Director Busey.
Yeah, one thing I'll just quickly say, I think the idea of working with the PIOs is a great idea. One of the challenges that we have is, a lot of our funding is distributed formulaically. About 80% of that funding is used formulaically, right? So once it leaves our hands, it's budgeted by the cities and counties on a variety of projects. And so we don't always know what projects have Measure A money in them, right? Because we're not budgeting that. And in addition, the PIOs are very focused on elevating their agency, right? That's their focus. And so we have to try to stay. It's hard to track it all and stay ahead of it all, so that we're ensuring that there's a little bit of discussion when there's Measure A funds about a project when the groundbreaking happens, as an example. So that's kind of where we need the help. We do think there's a lot of synergy with the PIOs, and if we had a person to coordinate with the 14 agencies that do that work, I think we would be much more successful. But thank you.
And just really quick, I want to say that I really do appreciate the Facebook posts that come out, and I try to like them and make comments, so I do appreciate that.
Director Guerra.
Thank you, Chair. First, I forget, I'd be remiss if I didn't support the Stockton Boulevard partnership, or Stockton Boulevard BRT item, given the fact that the Colonial Heights neighborhood is meeting tonight. So for those that are watching. But to that point, there's no question that that we need to do more outreach and education. I mean, in fact, I think that's what hurt us in Measure B. We got going too late, and we didn't get out that information. And I think, with a little more headway, we could have probably beat that last 0.3%. The question, though, becomes what level of work we're trying to accomplish here. I mean, what I think we do need is someone who's much more experienced in that effort. You're asking for a junior staffer. All of us have junior staffers. I've been a junior staffer. And then a spread of a lot of work over this. So that's, I think, the question we should have. No question that we shouldn't do outreach or education. What I'm hearing from the board then is to say that if you do hire somebody, then they shouldn't be doing any of the other work, the grants and applications, because you're just not going to get that out of a junior staffer at that point. But those are my comments here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Director Guerra. And I think Director Busey, you're hearing from a number of authority board members, I think rightfully so, that there is kind of a growing sensitivity to how and why and by what means we enhance our communication efforts, both as it relates to kind of our day-to-day presence and how we showcase what we do for the public generally. But as we get closer to a ballot measure, I think there's a growing interest on this board for a very methodical way to communicate about that part of that initiative, lowercase I. So what I would suggest, and perhaps this is already set in motion, but we do have a committee that's formed on the measure, and I suspect that that being communication, kind of the communication campaign relative to the measure will be front and center of that committee's consideration in terms of what resources we may need to add or have enhanced, whether it's off-the-shelf help from firms or somehow having a FTE or FTEs, plural, whether it be shared costs with other sister agencies or not, be part of that effort in addition to kind of the day-to-day needs as it relates to outreach to the general public. So I think that's probably a good way to put a bow on that part of the feedback you're receiving. And I, too, will add my interest to Director Kennedy's as expressed and Director Guerra's about BRT. That is a very much needed public transportation asset along the Stockton Boulevard corridor. It's a shared part of the political geography that has a number of us that continue to be very exercised in the right way about how to bring BRT to that part of the city and county of Sacramento. So that, again, I'm not surprised that's why you're hearing kind of that interest expressed here today in the context of budgeting and resource allocation. So, Director Busey.
I'm just trying to close this out. So for the purposes of the budget, do we want to, I would suggest keeping the budget as is, but as far as the actual decision to utilize that budget, we would rely upon the subcommittee to have a further discussion about that and figure out a path forward. So we at least have a placeholder in case we want to do anything later.
I'm seeing some nodding heads, so I feel comfortable with that.
Second, as it relates to Stockton Boulevard BRT, it's not an Measure A project. However, I guess my view of what SDA's role is to bring funding in to priorities, and if that's a priority project, there are things that SDA can do, whether that's a coordinating role or helping and assist, on grant applications. So if that's something of interest, I'm happy to bring back an item specifically on that to talk through what we could do and get maybe some further board direction on if it's a big priority for what your expectations are for SDA's role in trying to move that project forward.
I won't speak for the others you've heard from about this issue this afternoon, but I certainly would be interested in hearing about that. But I don't know if Directors Guerra or Kennedy want to chime in, but I think it's a good idea. Director Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director Guerra, as well. I think that's important. I mean, this is a project we've been talking about a long time. It's very popular with so many people, but yet it doesn't seem to be getting the momentum that it needs and that it should have. So I'm going to be directing these same questions at SACOG and RT and other boards that I sit on. So if we could, do what you said, I think that's a good idea. It is, as we all know, the busiest transit route throughout the RT system. It's badly needed down that area. So thank you, gentlemen, for bringing it up as well.
Great, thank you. Director Guerra.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And again, even this, we've moved to the point where we have an MOU between the city and the county and RT. But until we actually start, putting some dollars on to make the next steps moving forward, then we won't see the opportunity for any BRT in the region if we can't get this one going where we have willing partners at the moment. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right, Madam Clerk, do we have anyone from the public that wishes to address the authority board on this matter?
I have not received any public comments.
Okay, very good. Then we will move on to the next item.
Item number 8 is to receive a presentation on the SB1 competitive programs and upcoming 2026 program opportunities.
All right, good afternoon, Board. So this is SB1 competitive programs and upcoming opportunities, really to give an update on some of these programs that are not Measure A related, but we leverage Measure A to try to access those funds. Cool. I got to click this thing. All right. You remember back in 2016, before SB1, we were in a really bad position as far as transportation funding across the state, right? Gasoline tax is primarily the revenue that was being provided to the counties and cities as well as the transit agencies, and it had not kept up inflation. It was not indexed to inflation, and then there were no fees on electric vehicles or hybrids. And so it was a tough time. And so in 2017, when SB1 was passed, it really provided a lot more funding to the counties, the city, trans providers, Caltrans to move project forwards. One thing they did differently when they did SB1 is they created those fees. They indexed the gas prices to inflation, but they created a whole new set of competitive programs across the state. And so this slide here provides how much funding every 2 years is coming from these programs. So there's $144 million available statewide in the local partnership program, $500 million under Solutions for Congested Corridors, and $900 million under Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. And we use this beautiful photo on the right.
I just now recognize that.
Okay. Our chair took. So a little bit of how we've tried to leverage some of the local Measure A funds over the past 3 cycles of SB1. So in 2018, about $150 million was awarded to projects within Sacramento County. We actually prioritized the Capital Southeast Connector through our local partnership program in 2018, resulting in about a $20 million award. And then the other one that was a little more strategic is Caltrans came to us saying, hey, can we advance some of our Measure A capital dollars to position some of these larger projects for funding, specifically I-5 managed lanes or HOV lanes from downtown Sacramento to Elk Grove, as well as the US 50 project that's actually still in construction. And so they got with those funds, we were able to advance those projects, got over $100 million in funding. And then in 2020, we prioritized the South Watt project, which was awarded as well and now is in construction and is also a Measure A project. And then in 2022, most recently, we prioritized the US 50 Gold Line improvements, which made improvements to both the Gold Line and the US 50 interchange. And we submitted the I-5 Managed Lanes project, and which was part of the $121.6 million in awards in 2022. So the total awards to projects in Sacramento County over these cycles is $432 million. You can see they're kind of broken out by program here. But this gives you an idea of, this competitive funding that we can pursue with Measure A. So the current round of SB1 funding was due in December of 2024. The announcements will be in about 4 weeks. I just wanted to provide a quick overview of those projects. So we had Transforming the Sacramento Region project, which was prioritized by STA. We had the I Street Bridge Replacement Project, which was submitted by the City of Sacramento. And then we had the Placer Sacramento Gateway Phase 3 project, which improves work in both its work in Placer and Sacramento County. And that project was actually prioritized by STA. We went through a prioritization effort here at STA. It's our priority for this program. It was also SACOG's priority for this program. And then finally, the Grant Line Road Safety and Freight Mobility Project, which was prioritized by SACOG. SACOG has traditionally not prioritized, done the prioritization of SB1. They've just started doing that. And so we've been doing the LPP. They just started wanting to prioritize the other programs. So now we're trying to work through that together. So we'll find out in about 4 weeks what the actual awards are. And then just kind of looking ahead, specifically on Solutions for Congested Corridors program, which we talked about earlier. There are several of these multimodal corridor plans that need to be completed. So you have to complete the planning first, and then after the planning is completed, you could submit for these applications. There's currently 3 planning efforts going on now. One on US 50 from West Sacramento to Pollock Pines, another on 99 from Sacramento to Bakersfield, and finally on 80 from Sacramento to Lincoln and Auburn. Those efforts are led by different agencies. So for this program, it's usually the RTPA or Caltrans who submits for those. And so in 2026, usually, you know, we can only submit, we really should only be submitting one of these. We'll have to figure out which of these 3 corridors have been included. STA's role is to be actively engaged in these discussions to ensure that the projects that are priority to our jurisdictions are included, and if they're being missed by, you know, Caltrans is missing a project, we can, or SACOG is missing a project, we can ensure are included. I'll give you an example because we brought up Stockton, but the State Route 99 project, State Route 99 study, they were doing that right in the middle of the update to the blueprint, so we had to make sure that all the projects that were in the blueprint made it into that project, including Stockton Boulevard. So that's why that project is now going to be included in that plan. But those are our efforts, and we'll need to figure out what the priorities are. We'll help figure out what the priorities are with the region on what gets submitted in 2026. So that's it. I'm open to any questions.
Great. Thank you, Director Busey. Director Dickinson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the presentation. What caught my eye was the sentence under the fiscal impact paragraph for the local partner competitive program, in the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. There's no viable Measure A funding to support this planning or grant work, and the local partnership formula program funds STA has access to are not eligible for this work. So I want to confirm that there are no Measure A projects that can serve as, I'm assuming you're looking for local match for the local partnership program or the congested corridors program. Is that, that's a starting place? Is my assumption correct that you're looking for match?
Well, so I think we'll maybe talk about Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. So Trade Corridor Enhancement Program is the largest SB1 competitive program.
Right.
There's no discretionary funding source that STA has access to help, you know, get everyone together and develop a countywide strategy to pursue Trades Corridor Enhancement Program funding. So in the last cycle, it was really a free-for-all on who submit on a bunch of different various applications across Sacramento County, with not a lot of coordination happening, because there really just isn't any, and there just isn't any real good Measure A funds. So Solutions for Congested Corridors, that program I was talking about, Smart Growth Arterials and Corridors program, it aligns really well with Solutions for Congested Corridors because we can continue to get these complete street projects funded out of that program. So there's I think even in this Placer Sacramento Gateway submittal included a City of Sacramento, like a Broadway Complete Streets project, I believe, as an example. So that aligns really well. On the local partnership program funding, that's also, we administer that, but there's no funding that comes to us, obviously, from local partnership program, nor is there, it's got a very broad eligibility as well. So there isn't a really good discretionary Measure A funding source that we have access to do both the administrative work, the strategy work, and then I would say the capital funding, we have to kind of work with, that all really goes to the cities and the county and the agencies. We have to work with them on that, right?
Oh, okay. I'm not sure I have followed you entirely. Let me try to go at it the other way around. We have projects that have Measure A allocations for them, but they aren't fully funded. So what I was really trying to figure out is whether what you meant by this sentence was that there are no Measure A projects that need additional funding that would also qualify under the local partnership program or the congested corridors program. And I can't
Yeah.
That doesn't seem
Yeah, so
possible
let
to me.
me-
So
Let me give you an example of that,
Yeah.
right? So when I was in Sacramento County, we wanted to pursue local partnership program, right? And understanding where the SB1 competitive funding environment was going, we needed to ensure we had something that was somewhat VMT neutral, right? So what I did is I said, hey, what is the project that you have? It was the US 50 Hayes Lavin interchange. We did some things to that, so it wasn't capacity increasing. But in addition to that, we partnered with SAC-RT on their Gold Line modernization. So the county did that, right? And then they brought that project, basically they brought that project forward to SDA to prioritize. I'm saying that work, that matchmaking work, that's not really there's no good funding source to do that matchmaking work, to coordinate all that, to make sure that's happening across most of the SB1 programs. Now, each agency can do that independently.
well, that was my note. So
They can. They've got a lot going on and they
Yeah.
don't know all. They don't necessarily have the expertise or the relationships across all the jurisdictions
So
to do it.
you're really
it's-
so are you're really saying there aren't multi-jurisdictional projects that have Measure A money in them that could be brought together to formulate one application, a single application for these two SB1 programs. Is that what you're?
Yep, that's exactly
So
right.
it's just left to each of the jurisdictions individually to, okay. It's not that there aren't Measure A projects.
Oh, no,
that-
they're Measure A projects.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
just they have to figure it out themselves. And so, yeah.
Okay, I think I understand what you're trying to what you're saying here.
Yeah.
I have another question, and maybe this is in the Stockton BRT category in a way. We've been trying for longer than some of the people I think sitting here on this dais have been alive to get a third main line track for the Capitol Corridor to use between here and Roseville. That, from my understanding of the conversations with the CCJPA staff, is really stuck because they can't. The funding they had is now not adequate because of the increase, the passage of time, the increase in costs. My question is whether or not there's an opportunity here, especially with respect to the 80 corridor work with Placer County to somehow advance that project. But I guess you're still in the planning stages for the corridor study, whereas the third main line track basically just needs money to get built. I mean, there's still a few issues, but that's really the issue.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So last year, the board took action to partner with PCTBA to update that plan. So we're providing a little bit of local match out of that smart growth money we were talking about. And so, we need to update that plan. The plan's only good 4 years. It's expiring. We'll get that plan updated, and then we can apply, or there can be an application that includes that particular third track project, right, which is right along that 80 corridor. And I would say that project, I believe, has been funded. They have gotten funding out of that program before. The last cycle they got funding. So there is some challenges with, getting grant funds from the same program again after you've already committed to delivering that project. So that could be a challenge. There may be applicability under the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, right, because there's both freight and passenger rail on that line. So does that third track project provide additional capacity to relieve some of the passenger rail service that's on the freight, right? There's the potential for that to happen, but
I think, I don't remember, I think they may have gotten TIRSIP funding as opposed to, they didn't get, I don't think they got congested corridors money, and they might have gotten trade corridor enhancement money, but I'm not sure. I think it was TIRSIP money that they got. But nonetheless, whatever the answer to that little riddle is, I'm of the same mindset as my colleagues who have spoken about the Stockton BRT project and how it needs to get done. It's been around too long. They're absolutely right about that. It has enormous benefits that could be realized. So could the third mainline track, I think, both for passenger as well as freight movement. And so I just would appreciate it if we can, if there's any avenue here to explore for putting together an application with the CCGPA and some of the other jurisdictions for 26, that we'd take a look at that.
that's good direction. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Vice Chair Rathel.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe I misunderstood you, but what I heard was that the corridor plans that are in process at the 3 different agencies, you kind of indicated we would pick one of those, and all 3 of these are going forward. We're just playing a role in making sure Measure A projects are included in all those plans, or did you mean we could only prioritize one of these corridor plans?
Yeah, I think it's going to make sense for us to all try to rally around one corridor, right? Does that mean we take turns? What does that mean, right? There are different challenges there, right? So, the 80 corridor has been funded out of multiple cycles, right? They've done really well. The US 50, they got money out of the first cycle, but they haven't got any money out of the last few cycles because they haven't been eligible because they don't have a planning document. So maybe that makes more sense. That effort's being led by SACOG, and then. On 99, that's an effort led by Caltrans, but it's like 7 counties. So like the idea of trying to get, as an example, Stockton Boulevard included in like a 7-county project, to get anything measurable out of that might be challenging. And so I think SGA's role is to advocate, right, and to try to advocate for where we think we can be the most competitive across those various corridors, and understanding. You can do the planning, and then you have to have the projects that are ready to receive the funds, right? So there's a readiness component to that. So SDA's role can be advocating to make sure we get the best project move forward, working with SACOG on prioritization. That's generally the kind of thing. And if there's Measure A funds involved, it's even better, as far as I'm concerned. So,
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments for our Executive Director? Okay, seeing none. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone from the public signed up to speak on this matter?
We do not.
Okay, very good. Next item, please.
Next item on the agenda is our Executive Director's report.
I'm going to go quick. Let's go. So we have. Just want to highlight that a lot of the board members here, as well as staff, went to Cap. A lot of you were involved in advocating on behalf of the Sacramento region for our priorities. Appreciate everyone who went there. I was on the transportation team. We specifically advocated for a new surface transportation bill. The existing bill is expiring, so we definitely want to continue to have those federal funds come in through both SACOG and through some federal discretionary programs. And then, as we talked about prioritization, there's a prioritization effort that both STA and SACOG were involved in to prioritize what we'd advocate for Cap, and so we advocated for those projects. Although I would say, it's an interesting time in Washington right now. The subcommittee work, I just want to provide a big update on that. So the subcommittee meetings are kicking off. Our first meeting is on the new transportation funding subcommittee is May 14th, and then we have a sort of what's STA's role in the region meeting on May 19th. Just as a reminder, that's happening. And then for our meeting in June, we have the SDA, we have the budget, the final budget. And then the other item I wanted to note was we have we're doing a presentation on VMT under SB 743 and CEQA, specifically because, just as an example, if you're familiar with the YOLO 80 Managed Lane project, that project was required to provide $55 million in funding for VMT reducing projects, which is some of that went to transit, some of that went to active transportation. And so we're looking at a kind of a countywide, is there a countywide strategy of capturing those funds as our toll lane network builds out to fund our transit needs as well as our active transportation needs along those corridors? So this is part of that, just kind of update you on what's going on with that. It's a technical subject. We'll try not to make it too technical, but we're also going to, the professional advisor group is going to go through the same thing as well. So, but we're looking to see if there's an opportunity to utilize those funds somehow to advancing some of our projects. And then we'll be in recess in July. So, thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you. Any comments or questions as it relates to the director's report? Okay, seeing none. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone from the public signed up to speak on this matter?
We do not.
Okay, next item, please.
Final item on the agenda today is comments and reports from authority members and our CARTA update.
Okay, I know that Director Talamantes had to leave for another appointment, and she informed me before she departed that they did not meet, and so there is therefore nothing to report. And any other comments or questions for the good of the order from board members? Seeing none. And Madam Clerk, we have no one signed to speak on any further matter, right?
We do not.
All right. Then if there's no further business before this authority board, we stand adjourned.
Here.